Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy again. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning.
So, this morning we're here to talk about gene keys. And we have people that come in sometimes and they ask for a gene key reading. And I'm like, well, have you had a human design reading? Because without that, you won't understand what gene keys are. But today we're going to dive into that a little bit. So, maybe you can start off a little bit, Hartwell, and just tell us what gene keys are.
Yeah, absolutely. The gene keys are a fantastic revelation that came to Richard Rudd, and he wrote a fantastic book called The Gene Keys. You can see it there. And this was based upon his expertise in human design plus his wisdom from studying many different systems, including the I Ching. And so it kind of arose, it has a legacy to it, I guess you would say. And it's an absolutely brilliant addition to the tools that we have for moving towards our own unique expression.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the relationship to them with human design and the I Ching? How do they fit?
Well, as you know, I Ching is one of the components of the human design system, along with astrology, the chakra system, and Jewish, the Kabbalah tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the gene keys chart of Mahatma Gandhi, you will see, for instance, on the personality column that his sun is in gate 18 and his earth is in gate 17. And this brings the linkage between the gene keys and human design. Because in order to discover your gene keys, you need to look at your human design chart.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, in human design language, we would call those gates, gate 18. And that relates to and is correspondent to, of course, 18 in the I Ching. Now, when we bring it into Gene Keys language, we call it the Gene Key 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then the emphasis or the connection becomes more apparent between how 64 so often shows up in all sorts of human wisdom. There are
Mm-hmm.
64 gene keys, there are 64 gates in 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, and there are 64 codons when we speak about the human genetic makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So
So,
that's where it becomes exciting.
so how would you work with the gene keys for your own growth? Like, what what's an important thing to know when you're focusing on gene keys? Like, do you look at how they work together? Do you look at just one at a time and then try to integrate them all? Like, how does that work when you're trying to use them for your own growth?
Well, think of it this way. Think of the gene keys as a living energetic field. And the gene keys that are specific to you, because remember, you're going to have a maximum of 26 gene keys in your own human design chart. So out of the 64, you'll have a maximum of 26, probably less because often they're repeated. So when you engage with the gene keys, you look at these energies and you let your intuition lead the way, basically, Kris.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, where am I drawn in this exploration?
Mm-hmm.
Usually, you would start with the sun and the earth in both the personality and the design column, because
That's
these are
your
going to be your most
incarnation cross.
powerful. Pardon me?
That's what you call your incarnation cross too,
Yes, correct, which we talked about last week.
right?
So these are going to be very powerful in the language of the gene keys, your hologenetic profile.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like where abstract concepts meet the actual physical nature of your biology. That's what I see it as.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why it really excites me.
So when you look
Um,
at them, though, like if you like, because there's operating in the shadow, then there's just
yes,
then there's the out of balance part, which we call shadow, and then the city, right, which is operating how you're meant to operate. So
right.
would you look at
Yeah,
those two things and then say, oh, I think I need work in this area, so I'm going to explore this more? Would that be a good strategy for doing it, or?
Yeah, let me elaborate on what you just said because
Okay.
this is key. One of the key principles in the gene keys is that energy expresses on different levels. So there's three basic levels, three broad levels. There's the shadow level at which an energy expresses, and then and that is governed by the fear frequency. Okay.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you. So if you're in the fear frequency of your life predominantly, you're going to express the shadow expression of your gene key.
Hmm.
But when you raise your vibration to the level of a heart, open your heart and begin to live at a positive vibration that isn't governed by fear,
Hmm.
then these incredible gifts start to blossom and flower in your life. So if we, and then at the very peak of human experience and expression, we have the siddhi, which is a Hindu word that has to do with divine gifts.
Hmm.
And so each gene key has a shadow, a gift, and a siddhic level.
Hmm.
And most of us don't ever express the siddhic level, and yet it's an attractor field for our consciousness. And when
Hmm.
we contemplate the gift and the siddhi level, it draws us into a higher expression of our own frequencies.
Right.
So contemplation is the primary tool.
Mm.
And if we were to take an example, for instance, in Gandhi's life, we can see that he has a sun in gate 18. Now, the shadow, fear based expression of that would be judgment. Okay. Um, but when you raise above the shadow frequency, you come to integrity. And,
Hmm.
that was one of the things that Gandhi was primarily noted for is that he called everybody out.
Hmm.
He forced them, he forced people to see where they were not in integrity. And he lived with that integrity himself.
Sounds like you're calling me out because I think that's one of my gates.
Um, well, no, it's not,
Oh,
but
it's
I mean,
not?
you have
Oh, okay.
similar ones.
Oh,
You
okay.
have, I mean, do you want to use you as an example?
No, no. I was just making a
Okay.
comment. Just mean smarty pants like we
Yeah.
do.
Well, I have that one in case you're wondering.
Okay.
Um,
So,
but what excites me about that, Kris, is that people go people notice bad things about themselves, and the
mhm,
shadows really are bad things.
mhm,
We we're not proud of ourselves showing up and expressing the shadow side of ourselves, right?
mhm,
But then we try and think that it's something to cut out or get over or be embarrassed about.
mhm,
But all of us human beings have a tendency to express, on a level that's motivated by fear. But
mhm,
the good news here is that this same energy which appears as judgment,
mhm.
using 18 as the example, when you raise that to a higher frequency, you become a person of integrity.
Mhm.
So every shadow in your life is actually it hides the potential of a gift of power to emerge from it.
Yeah, it's just you have to identify it and then work on it. So, using systems like human design are very helpful to pinpoint those areas in your life that you need to work on. So, how can you actually activate your genius?
Well, as you said, there's all sorts of techniques that you and I are aware of now and that people can
Hmm.
discover for raising their vibration.
Hmm.
So as you raise your vibration, your genius starts to unfold naturally.
Hmm.
So, I mean, certainly there's work to be done in terms of psychological work, emotional release work, dealing with our issues. But
Hmm.
it takes the emphasis now off of those things and puts them on the gift and the siddhi frequencies. So if you sit in meditation, I know that, I have gene key 12, which is vanity. at its shadow frequency, but it's purity at its Siddhic frequency. I love the word purity. I love that word. It calls to me. It feels like something gets plucked, like the string of a guitar when I look at the gift in the frequency level,
You get
a gift in the Siddhic level. So it's almost like if people have looked at DNA, there's the talk of the junk frequencies or the junk DNA.
Right.
It's almost like as we raise the vibration of our own field, we start to bring about genetic mutations in ourselves. We start to activate the junk DNA, and it starts to emerge as genius, as a giftedness in the world.
Amazing. So can you give some examples of Gandhi's different gene keys and what they do so people understand? I know we did the one with integrity, but
Yes. Well, if we look at 17, for instance, 17 is about being opinionated at the shadow frequency. At the give frequency, it's farsightedness. Now, if we look at 39 and 38, and I know you have a relationship to those two, 38 is struggle at the shadow level. Everything in life feels like a struggle. But at the gift frequency, it's perseverance. And anybody who knows you knows that you have that gift. They can feel it and they can recognize it. And when you get to know your own gene frequencies, it's like, oh my God, that is so me. And you recognize yourself in the shadows, but you also feel like, oh, can you feel the connection, for instance, between struggle and perseverance? And perseverance and the highest level of the city for 38 is honor. And so we might think that honor isn't even a part of our life, and how does it relate to us? But when we meditate on these, we can begin, in a sense, we tune into the mythic level of life, and we begin to see, oh, I can feel intuitively the connection between struggle and perseverance and honor. And then the world becomes magically infused with meaning, and we no longer feel lost in the story.
Interesting. Yeah. It's amazing how you look at the shadow side and you want to disown it. And then you see the city side and you go, oh, that's exactly what I want to be, right?
Yeah, so to me, it helps release the shame of understanding or perceiving our own shadows.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier to release the fear and start to express at our gift level.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything else that you want to tell us about the gene keys before we wrap it up?
Oh, there's so much. I mean, I want everybody to know what the end of the story is. It's like sometimes we think that there's no light at the end of our tunnel. What would we look like if we were really expanded and living at, the highest level of ourselves? Now we have that tool. And I mean, what I would really want, because I just get excited talking about it, is like, you need to know your own gene keys. You need to know what's in your, the base level, your hologenetic profile, which includes not all of them, but the basic ones. Because then you will start to feel your genius as a real thing.
Yeah, and then you'll start to understand what you look like as an integrated being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how exciting is that?
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, because then all of those questions, who are we? What are we meant to do? All of those things start falling into place because you can feel them through the gene keys, right?
That's exactly right, Kris.
So the next topic, I'm going to let you intro. So next week, what are we going to be talking about, Hartwell?
We're going to be talking about profiles, which is a very important part of human design. On Gandhi's chart there, I don't know if you can see it, but the profile says that he is a 6'2". And so there are a half dozen or so different profiles. We won't be going into details about each one because that would be too much. Maybe we'll do that later.
Okay.
But this is one of the basics of a human design chart and the profile arises from the line of the sun and the earth. So Gandhi's sun is in gate 18, line 6, and gate 17, line 6, and these are in gate line 2. So the profile arises from the lines of the incarnation cross of the sun and earth on both sides.
So just like everything else, it's interconnected. So next week, join Hartwell and myself, and we'll be diving into the profile a little bit. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. God bless you all. Sending you lots of love and hope to see you in store sometime soon. Bye.
Bye for now.